New York City once pulsed with neighborhood institutions that defined daily life for generations of residents. Corner stores, family diners, and local shops formed the backbone of community existence, places where everyone knew your name and your regular order. These weren't just businesses, but gathering spots where friendships formed, romances bloomed, and the city's heartbeat could be felt in every cup of coffee. The vanished establishments of old New York tell stories of a grittier, more intimate city that exists now only in memory. Before Starbucks colonized every corner, Chock full o' nuts reigned as New York's coffee kingdom, with orange and brown storefronts dotting Manhattan like friendly beacons. The chain peaked during the 1950s and 60s with over 80 locations, serving quick lunches to secretaries, cab drivers, and executives alike. Founded by William Black in 1926, the restaurants originally sold nuts before pivoting to coffee and simple sandwiches. Their cream cheese and nut sandwich on dark bread became legendary, costing just a nickel during the Depression. The company hired African-American workers when few others would, creating pathways to middle-class stability for thousands of families. The chain's efficiency defined mid-century New York's relentless pace, where standing room-only counters meant you ate fast and moved on. There were no chairs in most locations, just long counters where strangers stood elbow to elbow, united by coffee that actually tasted good and cost almost nothing. The restaurants embodied democratic spirit, where doormen and doctors shared counter space without pretension. Workers in nearby offices relied on chock full o' nuts for breakfast and lunch, creating rhythms and routines that structured their days. The coffee itself became a household staple, sold in supermarkets across the region, with that memorable jingle promising it was heavenly. Families brewed it every morning, filling tenement apartments and suburban homes with its distinctive aroma. The brand represented reliability during uncertain times, surviving the Depression, World Wars, and economic turbulence while maintaining consistent quality. Walking past those orange storefronts meant comfort, the promise that some things remained constant in a rapidly changing city. The Automat revolutionized dining when Horn and Hardart opened their first location in 1912, bringing German-inspired automation to American eating habits. Behind gleaming chrome and glass walls sat individual portions of food, accessible by inserting nickels into slots and turning knobs to unlock small doors. The concept mesmerized customers who marveled at retrieving hot macaroni and cheese, fresh pie, or beef stew without human interaction. The flagship location at Times Square became a tourist attraction and neighborhood institution simultaneously, serving everyone from Broadway performers to homeless New Yorkers seeking affordable meals. The Automat's democracy extended beyond its chrome facade into genuine accessibility that made it beloved across class lines. A nickel or dime bought dignity, allowing anyone to eat without begging or charity, selecting their meal from walls of plenty behind glass. Lonely elderly people spent hours nursing coffee, finding companionship in bustling rooms. Students studied at marble tables, artists sketched fellow patrons, and office workers grabbed quick lunches, all coexisting in spaces that welcomed everyone equally. Depression-era New Yorkers particularly treasured the Automats, where modest means didn't exclude you from warm meals. Architecture and atmosphere elevated the Automat beyond mere cafeteria into something approaching cathedral, with high ceilings, elaborate tilework, and chandeliers creating unexpected elegance. The ritual of exchanging bills for nickels at the change booth, then feeding coins into slots to liberate food, became a New York initiation. Children pressed their noses against the glass, amazed by dolphin-shaped coffee spouts that poured endless streams. The marble tables witnessed millions of conversations, confidences, and chance encounters that shaped lives and relationships. When sleep eluded you or dawn broke after a long night, Bickford's cafeterias glowed like oases across Manhattan and outer boroughs. These 24-hour establishments served as refuge for insomniacs, night shift workers, performers finishing late shows, and anyone seeking sanctuary from darkness. The chain operated dozens of locations from the 1920s through the 1970s, offering cafeteria-style service where you grabbed a tray and selected from steam tables laden with home-style cooking. Comfort food dominated the menu: pot roast, mashed potatoes, apple pie, and coffee strong enough to keep you alert through anything. Bickfords attracted characters who formed temporary communities in those late hours when normal social rules loosened. Cab drivers on break swapped stories with jazz musicians winding down from gigs, while cops mingled with petty criminals maintaining uneasy truces over rice pudding. The cafeterias became unlikely democratic spaces where class, race, and occupation mattered less than shared experience of being awake while the city slept. Regulars developed routines, claiming favorite tables, bantering with night shift workers who knew their orders by heart. The steam rising from coffee urns and the clatter of cheap dishware created atmosphere impossible to replicate, authentic and unpretentious as the city itself. Nothing about Bickford's was fancy, from the institutional furniture to the simple food served on heavy ceramic plates, but that plainness felt honest. You could sit for hours over a single cup of coffee without harassment, making it lifeline for those with nowhere else to go. The cafeterias witnessed confessions, celebrations, and quiet desperation, absorbing countless stories into walls yellowed by decades of cigarette smoke. Orange and blue storefronts marked Nedick's locations across New York, promising hot dogs, orange drink, and donuts to hurried New Yorkers from the 1920s onward. The chain specialized in speed and economy, serving standing customers at counters where transactions took seconds and quality never disappointed. Robert Nesmith and Orville Dickinson founded the company in 1913, combining their names to create a brand that became synonymous with quick, cheap sustenance. The famous orange drink, made from real oranges, provided vitamin C to generations who couldn't afford fresh fruit. Nedick's occupied street corners in high-traffic areas, positioning themselves where crowds naturally converged and hunger struck suddenly. The orange facades became landmarks, meeting points where friends agreed to rendezvous before adventures or after work. Standing at Nedick's counters, consuming hot dogs topped with their signature mustard and sauerkraut became quintessential New York experience. Times Square, Penn Station, and Grand Central housed flagship locations that served thousands daily, creating assembly line efficiency that somehow maintained quality. The orange drink itself became a cultural phenomenon, with its sweet tart flavor impossible to describe but instantly recognizable to anyone who'd consumed it. Children begged parents for Nedick's orange while shopping downtown, and the bright beverage provided rare treat during lean years. The hot dogs weren't gourmet, but they were consistent, reliable, and satisfying in ways that transcended their humble ingredients. Standing at those counters, surrounded by strangers all engaged in the same efficient ritual, you felt part of something larger than yourself. Dubrow's cafeteria in the Garment District served as unofficial headquarters for New York's Jewish community, particularly the theater crowd and garment workers who filled the surrounding blocks. From 1931 until 1985, this cafeteria on 7th Avenue functioned as combination restaurant, social club, and community center. Brothers Benjamin and Max Dubrow created a space where Yiddish theater performers, garment industry bosses and workers, and neighborhood residents could find familiar food and familiar faces. The steam tables offered brisket, kasha varnishkis, stuffed cabbage, and other Eastern European specialties that connected immigrant generations to their heritage. The garment industry's rhythms dictated Dubrow's busiest hours, with cutters, sewers, and designers flooding in during lunch breaks. Union organizers held unofficial meetings at back tables, while Broadway stars stopped by after performances for late-night meals and conversation. The cafeteria witnessed labor disputes, business deals, romantic entanglements, and artistic collaborations, serving as informal office for industries that defined mid-century Manhattan. Regulars occupied the same tables daily, creating communities within the larger establishment. Walking into Dubrow's meant entering a world apart, where time moved differently and the outside city's pressures temporarily lifted. The clatter of dishes, the smell of coffee and cooking meat, and the cacophony of multiple conversations in multiple languages created symphony of urban life. Elderly men played cards or chess at corner tables, having spent entire afternoons over a single piece of cake. Young couples shared meals they could barely afford, stretching their dollars while dreaming of better futures. Hidden on Fulton Street near the waterfront, Prexy's served sandwiches that achieved legendary status among those who knew where to find them. This unassuming luncheonette operated from the 1930s through the 1960s, catering primarily to dock workers, financial district employees, and Fulton Fish Market vendors. The proprietor, known only as Prexy, created sandwiches of impossible proportions, stacking meats and cheeses with the structural engineering required to prevent collapse. $1 bought enough food for 2 meals, but nobody ever saved half for later. The sandwich construction approached art form, with Prexy and his staff layering ingredients with care and precision that belied the speed of assembly. Fresh bread came from nearby bakeries, meats were sliced to order, and vegetables were crisp and generous. The roast beef sandwich with coleslaw became particularly famous, with meat piled so high that biting into it required unhinging your jaw. Regulars developed relationships with counterworkers who knew their preferences and occasionally slipped extra pickles or chips onto plates. Prexy's represented the kind of establishment that could only exist in Old New York, where personality trumped marketing and quality spoke for itself. There were no signs advertising the world's greatest sandwiches because everyone who needed to know already knew. Word of mouth brought customers from across the city, willing to navigate the chaotic streets around the fish market for those legendary creations. The luncheonette served as neutral territory where competing fish vendors could sit side by side, where Wall Street clerks rubbed shoulders with union dock workers. While Katz's Delicatessen still operates today, the version most real New Yorkers remember existed during the 1940s through 70s, when the Lower East Side remained genuinely working class. Founded in 1888, Katz's served generation after generation of Jewish immigrants and their descendants, maintaining traditions while the neighborhood transformed around it. The massive space, with its cafeteria-style service and sawdust-covered floors, felt like stepping into another era. You collected a ticket at the entrance, then navigated to various stations where cutters sliced pastrami, corned beef, and brisket with rhythmic precision. The experience of eating at Katz's during its heyday involved more than food. It meant participating in cultural ritual with specific rules and etiquette. You tipped the cutter directly, receiving generous samples while he sliced, and you never lost your ticket or faced substantial fines. The pickles came free, barrel-aged and impossibly sour, perfectly complementing the fatty richness of the meat. Families celebrated occasions at Katz's, conducting entire relationships across its communal tables over decades. The neighborhood surrounding Katz's teemed with similar establishments during the mid-20th century, creating concentration of Jewish delicatessens unmatched anywhere else. Katz's survived while competitors closed, maintaining quality and tradition even as the Lower East Side gentrified and changed character. Walking in during the 1960s meant encountering elderly Yiddish speakers, young families, and everyone in between, all seeking the same connection to cultural heritage. The Cutters developed legendary reputations, their names known across the city. How Katz's survived decades. Before shopping malls and big box stores, Woolworth's 5 and dime stores anchored American downtowns and neighborhoods, and their lunch counters fed shoppers and workers for decades. The New York locations, particularly the flagship store on Broadway, featured long counters with red vinyl stools where you could get hot meals for pennies. From the 1930s through the 1970s, these lunch counters served as democratic meeting places where everyone sat elbow to elbow, regardless of background or bank account. The menu offered American classics, grilled cheese, tuna melts, egg salad sandwiches, milkshakes, and pie. Woolworth's counters became sites of social change, most famously when the Greensboro sit-ins of 1960 challenged segregation, but New York locations had their own significance. The counters represented post-war prosperity and consumption, where ordinary people could afford meals out and small luxuries. Mothers brought children for ice cream sodas after shopping, office workers grabbed quick lunches, and elderly people found companionship over coffee and conversation. The stores themselves dazzled with their variety, selling everything from thread to goldfish, from candy to housewares. The distinctive smell of Woolworth's combined coffee, popcorn, and various candies into an aroma impossible to replicate or forget. Those red vinyl stools spun completely around, a small thrill for children who turned until dizzy while waiting for their grilled cheese sandwiches. The counter staff formed their own community, developing efficient systems for managing rush hours when every seat filled and people waited for spaces. Sitting at those counters meant participating in American ritual, one that connected you to millions of others. These vanished institutions represented more than commercial enterprises. They formed the connective tissue of neighborhood life in Old New York. Each store and diner carried stories of countless lives intersecting, of communities forming around shared spaces and shared meals. Their disappearance marks not just business failure, but cultural transformation, the replacement of local character with corporate uniformity. Yet the memories persist, carried by those who remember when New York belonged to New Yorkers,